I think the movement and this way of thinking and the recovery of these practices and this tradition, and I say recovery, but what I mean is just bringing it forward more than it has, is critical to the emerging system. It's going to be to allow this next iteration of the church to come into being. Imagine if the Episcopal Church, with its rich history and tradition, was contemplative and thoughtful about what it was doing, what it was saying, and how, and was discerning about when to speak and how to do it, and how to do it in a compelling way, and how to do it in a way that's at the heart of Christ. That I am now seeing more a willingness to do that, and I think there's the game changer. The ability to, again, not out self-righteous the self-righteous, but to have a way to speak to the world that's grounded. And when I think of, I was having breakfast with somebody this morning. We were talking about Rosa Parks, and the idea that this is not somebody this is somebody that was formed. She was formed and knew and was part of a movement and knew when to act. This isn't somebody that was out virtue signaling and being outraged and releasing statements and whatever. This was a person that knew when to act, but that comes out of a formation. I think this is going to be critical to what's emerging. I think if we can embrace this, and that we will see something new, not only new, but also transformational.
Yeah, I think that the undergirding of a contemplative community, whether that's in a very localized community or across the entire church, is in fact what gives the wisdom to the wider community, whether that's local or nationwide, region-wide, province-wide, whatever. It's the model I have. It's my whole way of thinking is very Benedictine, right? But the model I have is when a community of monks have to make a decision, right, short of a dire emergency, which almost never happens, right? In every other situation, the first thing they will do is pray. And they'll do that silently, and then they'll, vocalize the prayers, whatever the case might be. Then they'll discuss it. If there's not immediate consensus, which is almost always, they'll go back to prayer. One of the great things I learned from one of my first priors was we had a house meeting once a month. That was the place where we made those kinds of decisions, but that would affect the whole community, maybe our guests as well. And at the end of the meeting, if there was not a consensus, he said, okay, we'll put this on the agenda for next month, and we'll pray all month about it. And when I was first there, remember, coming out of media of life, television, working in that world, which was, constantly I thought, are you kidding me? We're not going to be able to make this decision. And sometimes it was only one or two people who weren't on board. And we'd come back the next month, and I'd be like, well, are we going to be able to do this? And almost none of these decisions were truly life-shattering, right? And it works. You have to be willing to take time. There's all kinds of times when the church moves too slowly because it just thinks it can get away with moving too slowly. But there are other times that the church moves slowly because God's people need time to come to, to really be able to listen to the Holy Spirit, to be able to listen to what's next. And the Holy Spirit is as involved in guiding, let's say, a particular person's vocation as the Holy Spirit could be involved in guiding institutional reforms that involve budgets and staffing and, all of it. She should be invited in for all of it. And that's the way you do it. Yeah, oftentimes, though not always, contemplatives are much more introverted. I certainly am not one of those people, right? I'm much more extroverted. And the whole extroversion thing has almost nothing to do with being a contemplative, okay? But oftentimes they are, and so they're much more quiet. And eventually, if you're someone like me who was ready to talk all the time, the learning over decades to learn to be quiet first and really, really listen, and then even to just listen to myself, listen to the Holy Spirit, all of that takes time. But because they're not the type that's going to jump to an answer or a proposal or whatever, the first thing I think you have to try to do is to invite folks in who are going to be that and help the culture of the chapter or the vestry or the group, whatever the group that has to make the decision, into a more contemplative space. And there's several different ways that can be done, right? That can be done through a short liturgy that's held prior to the opening of the thing. It could be done through a Lectio Divina that's done within the group. It could be done by just observing 5 minutes of silence. There's all sorts of different ways that you can approach sort of building in the contemplative into the structure of the community, the group that's gathered. But it's important to, like everything else, do it step by step, not just suddenly say, okay, chapter, we're gonna be all kind of contemplative in this next decision. You build on it, right? And I think that's the first thing. But sometimes for clergy in a parish, it's difficult for them to identify who contemplatives might be amongst them. And so that's a real challenge. And I think one of the ways to meet that challenge is to do something where you open, where it's not something that anyone is expected at. And it's, whether it's a sit, whether it's, a Taizé service, again, anything, and see who shows up, right? They might be exactly who you expected, and then again, maybe not.